freaky Frankensteins. Up next on Howl-O-Ween. Welcome to Howl-O-Ween, where we take a look at those spooky spooksters, the main monsters, and their movies. Frankenstein's monster has been a horror staple ever since Mary Shelley wrote the original novel way back in 1818. The famous Universal film from 1931 further cemented Frankenstein's monster forever in horror history. And yeah, the monster is not named Frankenstein, but everyone calls the monster Frankenstein anyway. Of course, there is an argument that says Dr. Frankenstein was the real monster of the story, but we'll leave that aside for now. There have been a metric ton of Frankenstein films, TV shows, comic books, radio plays, books, you name it. And as for the movies, not all of them are as good as the original from 1931. Sometimes they're outright bizarre, weirdo riffs on the Frankenstein mythos and are pretty weird. Some play up that weirdness for comedy value, but not all of them. Anyway, this time I have 3 Frankenstein-esque monster movies for you that are definitely on the weird end of the spectrum. Namely, freaky Frankensteins. Jeez. First up, we have Blackenstein from 1973. Man, this is a blaxploitation movie made on a super low budget. It features wooden acting, bad editing, bad sound quality, all of the things you'd expect from the genre, along with a Frankenstein monster who's black. In this one, our heroine, Winifred, arrives in town and goes to see her old mentor, Dr. Stein. Stein is a genius medical researcher and surgeon, and the only one she feels who can help. See, Winifred's boyfriend, Eddie, is in a nearby hospital. He just got back from Vietnam, and he lost some limbs during combat. Winifred knows Dr. Stein has been working on DNA research and can regrow limbs. She wants Stein to help her man. Stein agrees. He has other patients in his mansion receiving similar treatments, and although it's not 100% effective, the work shows progress. Eddie is moved to the mansion, and work begins on restoring Eddie's body. But there's a problem. It seems that Dr. Stein's assistant is taking a liking to Winifred. He lets her know he's in love, but she rejects him. In an act of revenge, the assistant tinkers with Eddie's DNA serum, and that creates, you guessed it, Blackenstein, the Black Frankenstein. Naturally, the monster escapes the lab and goes around killing people. Oh man. So, this one is not anywhere near being in the same league as another blaxploitation horror classic, Blackula. The makeup is terrible too, but it does have some things going for it. First, if the equipment in the lab looks familiar, that's because several pieces of it came from the original Frankenstein movie from 1931. After that picture, they didn't just throw out all those electrical props. They were recycled for several Universal monster movies and serials, and then sold off to a prop house, which provided the Frankenstein lab props to dozens of horror and sci-fi movies well up into the 1980s. It's also interesting they talk about DNA research here. That was still a fairly new thing, at least so far as the public consciousness goes. Tying it into a Frankenstein movie at the time was pretty cool. There are perhaps only sorta 3 name brands in our cast. Dr. Stein is played by John Hart. He had a long movie career going all the way back to 1937. He played a lot of uncredited roles as he got older. Andrea King plays one of Stein's patients. She was a longtime actress in movies and especially television, appearing in Red Planet Mars, The Lemon Drop Kid, and many other films. And John Dennis plays a hospital orderly. He was in Soylent Green, Night of the Hunter, and a whole bunch of stuff. One of those familiar faces you see pop up in supporting roles. Next up, we have Rock and Roll Frankenstein from 1999. Oh man, this one is... Oh man, oh. This one, a music agent, his weird nephew, and a roadie decide that what they need to do is create a new act. Literally. They create a new superstar rocker using parts from the dead bodies of famous rockers who have passed away. Jimi Hendrix's hands, Elvis Presley's skull, and so on. It seems like it will be a big success, only they make a mistake. They wanted to give the Frankenrocker Jim Morrison's tackle, shall we say, but instead they used Liberace's bits, which makes the Frankenrocker a very confused monster, and yup, he goes around killing people. Enough said about this one. It may appeal to people with a certain sense of humor. Unlike Blackenstein, Rock and Roll Frankenstein is definitely a send-up and meant to be a comedy. It has its moments, I guess. No-name brands in the cast that I could see. And finally, from 1990 comes another parody, Frankenhooker. Oh, jeez. In this one, our hero Jeffrey is a medical student when his sexy girlfriend is killed in a lawnmower accident. Jeffrey gets the idea that he can rebuild her and bring her back to life, Frankenstein style. But he needs body parts, and he hits on the idea that he can use ladies of the evening, figuring that they wouldn't be missed. So he sets out to find some, and eventually gathers several together, who are all killed taking a drug he invents, which makes them explode. He gathers up the parts and gets to work building Frankenhooker. Naturally, she escapes his lab and goes around killing people. Oh, I think the only name brand actor in this really is Louise Lasser, who played the title character in Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman. She appears here as Jeffrey's mom. 1988's Penthouse Pet of the Year, Patty Mullen, stars as the girlfriend Elizabeth, who becomes Frankenhooker. She only made a handful of movies, sadly. I did like Jeffrey's lab. There are a few nods to the original Frankenstein, and I liked that. I guess it's kind of funny, kind of like Rock and Roll Frankenstein. Those two are, well, a little trashy, but, you know, it depends on your sense of humor. This one has hot chicks, though. So there you have it. Some freaky Frankensteins. Join me next time as Howl-O-Ween continues.